can't believe it's been 6 years already since the big dog Steve Duemig has passed away. And I know I don't work at WDAE anymore, but I'd be remiss if I didn't start the show today talking about a guy that was vital to my upbringing in this business and to my success and what I've been able to do for a living. I have so much love and so much appreciation for the big dog Steve Duemig. So every year on May 16th, I will do my part to honor his memory, because I feel like too many times in this world we forget about people and we don't give them their flowers when they're on this earth. And I just heard that from Bubba Ray Dudley, a big time wrestler. Now that the Sabu has passed away, hardcore wrestler, and he mentioned in the last couple of days, like, we need to do a better job of giving people their flowers while they're still here. Like, why do we have to wait till somebody passes away before we say a bunch of nice things about them? The big dog is no different. And even though him and I got along really well, and of course we had our back and forth, and we'll go over that here in a second. If we can't give somebody like the big dog their flowers when they're here anymore, we can give it to them on this day, May 16th, 6 years after we lost the big dog. And I say lost, and I'll put this out on Twitter, but I don't know if we've ever really lost him. Like, he's still here. And for me, this is not one of those things where you look at the big dog and he's far. Some people will say that they remember the big dog, but words say one thing. Actions speak much louder. Ever since I had an office at iHeart, ever since I started doing the podcast, this is right next to me. Every single show that I've ever done here on the Recher podcast for now 5+ months, this guy is right here. Him and I had our back and forths. I remember one time with the big dog, I walked something into the studio with a piece of paper. This is very early on. And he snatched it out of my hands. And I was pissed. I was fuming. And I go back into the studio, and he's going back and forth, and I'm being short with him because I'm a person that wears my emotions on my sleeve. And he goes, "Are you okay?" And I go, "No, I'm not okay." And I go, "My parents don't talk to me like that. My parents don't treat me like that. You're not going to treat me like that." And he pressed the button, and he looks on, and he goes, "Well, I'm sorry then." And I was like, "Oh." So the big dog at the end of every show would walk by the window, he would wave, and would be on his merry way. But after this day, after this show, the big dog walked out the door, and he hung a right, and he came into the producer's room. And he said, "I just wanted to apologize." And I said, "Water under the bridge, we're good." And from that day forward, him and I were like this, thick as thieves. We could have uncomfortable conversations. He would let me talk. Now, the thing is, when you produce with the big dog, you don't cut the big dog off, especially during his epic, famous 3 p.m. monologue. You do not speak during the big dog's monologue. And I saw many a producer before then almost get their head literally bit off for chiming in. But the more and more I worked with the big dog, he almost was like, "Are you going to chime in? Come on, I want to hear what you have to say." And I felt so honored that a guy who was the voice of Tampa Bay sports, who still is, I'm going to say this right now. This is 2025. I haven't worked there since November. I would have said this if I was still working there. There has never been a voice with more impact. There has never been a voice that has been louder in the Tampa Bay area when it comes to sports than Steve Duemig. Not anybody else at WDAE before, during, or after. Not anybody on the TV side. Not anybody on the writing side. Nobody. The weight that man's words held in our area, heavier than anyone. I have yet to see or hear anybody that comes close to Steve Duemig. And I have these conversations with people to this day. I have conversations with Phil Esposito all the time because they moved the plaque from what once was the Duemig Den to up in the press box. And I know that rubs some people the wrong way because it was the Duemig Den. It was honored. You know, he was honored with that suite there at Amalie Arena. But I got to be 100% honest with you and transparent. The person that sees it more than anybody is probably me now. And if you ever go up to the press box with me and you take that freight elevator to floor 7, I do the same thing. And I've been doing it for 5 years or ever how long the plaque has been in there. I always go over and I always touch the big dog's head and I always slap him and I say hello. And I will always do that because hockey would not be the same here if it wasn't for him. Those talks that he had with Phil Esposito as Phil Esposito was driving over the bridge and those two guys would argue about the team. That was must listen to radio. And Phil will forever hold the big dog, Steve Duemig, in high regard. And he'll always tell me my favorite memory of the big dog is when he would talk so much shit about hockey and the Lightning. And then I got him and Whitney Johnson on the ice on skates. And I would go over and mess with him. And he still to this day, Phil laughs like a little kid when he tells me those stories. When you have an opportunity to do anything in life, and you might be a little apprehensive because you're worried that somebody's going to say no, or you're going to maybe offend somebody, or just they're going to tell you to pound sand, always go for it. I remember coming up with the idea of doing bark or bite for the show. And I was, I was fully prepared for the big dog to just say, no, I don't want to do that. Why would I want to do more work? And I would give him a statement. He would either agree or disagree, bark or bite. And he was 100% on board and had so much fun with it and looked forward to it. And I remember even it was after I was his producer, I would come back to iHeart just for that segment. Because if I didn't, he would text me or call me, bark or bite. He would want, and it would be he would want to talk about soccer. He would want to talk about hockey. Like that was his opportunity to talk about golf and horse racing. It was an opportunity to talk about things outside of topic A, B, C, and D on the radio. And I think that's one of the biggest things that is missed in sports radio nowadays, whether it's here locally or abroad. We get hit over the head so many times with what the Dallas Cowboys and what LeBron James and what the Yankees are doing that we don't find enough ways to be creative with segments that talk about other pertinent topics in the sports world. But the fact that Bark or Bite became a staple on the Big Dog Show every Tuesday at 3:30, and it meant so much to him, it just made me proud that I could just be a little bit of a part of his final shows. And again, it goes back to having the balls and having the gumption to be able to like put yourself out there, man. You never know what's the worst thing that could happen. If he would have told me to go have fun, whatever, what am I going to do? And then the final show, well, not his final show, but the day that he passed 6 years ago today. And John and Robert, I'm going to get with you guys in a second here. I remember coming up with this entire show. It was Ian and I working together. Ron was off that day. And I remember going into the little producer, not the producer room, but the little podcast room, we called it, with John Momola. We'll talk to John in a second. And finding out at about like 2:55 that the big dog had passed. And you immediately rip up the paper. We know what our show is going to be about today. And I remember calling Phil Esposito and telling him. And You could just hear it in his voice. There's a pain. There was a mourning. And Phil's a pretty stoic guy. And he was like, Jay, thank you so much for telling me. I'm glad it was you. And I remember being on air that day with Ian and having so many people call in, Derek Brooks calling in, and just hearing the profound impact that Steve Duemig had on people in the Tampa Bay area and how sports radio is really unlike any other medium when it comes to media or sports. Because on a day where we could have talked about the Rays or the Lightning, we were talking about a guy that spoke about those teams. And everybody was locked in. And everybody had a memory. I remember when the big dog did this. I was here when the big dog spoke about this. Let's not ever forget those type of people that impact our lives in a way where you may not have ever met the big dog. But he was part of your childhood. He was part of your growing up. He was part of your sports fandom. He was the voice of the sports fan in this town. And again, the loudest, the most profound one that we've ever seen. And there's certain things you do in the radio business, and I felt the same way when we were doing hurricane coverage, where it's not about entertainment. It's more about a service to the people. And I think 6 years ago, I was as proud as I ever was working at WDA because I thought we honored him in the right way. I thought we gave people the platform to be able to speak about him, friends, family members. And I thought us as a staff at WDAE did a great job of highlighting him. And I think this is the first year that I'm not at DAE on this anniversary. I always took it as a point of pride being there that we commemorated this day with interviews and sound bites and drops and all these different things that really highlighted not just the talent, the big dog, but the man, Steve Duemig. And I'll forever do that. May 16th, 2025, 6 years after his passing, the big dog Steve Duemig, brother. I miss you. I love you. And yeah, as long as I have a microphone in front of my face on this day, I will definitely start every show talking about you crazy son of a bitch. Let's bring in John Momola. And John, this is the guy, and I know you got a chance to, like, your relationship was very detailed and in depth as well. And spending time with him at the Super Bowl was the way that you guys really, your friendship grew there, and you got to know a lot more about the guy. And man, just again, the voice of Tampa Bay sports, and it's incomparable.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I felt inclined on today to at least speak on the memory of the big dog. First and foremost, thoughts and prayers to his family, Jennifer, his widow.
No doubt.
She has been a constant presence with the station since his passing. Always reaching out, bringing lunches once in a while.
Yeah, she's the best.
She's fantastic. Yeah, we absolutely. Thoughts with her today. When I came to the station in 2011, the first interaction I had with Steve Duemig was a glance in the Duemig den. The Blackhawks were in town, and my dumbass at the time, 30-year-old kid coming into the new town, going to see my favorite hometown team, decided to wear the colors of that team in that den, and I told this at the memorial service. The next day, after that game, he walks in my office and slams the door. And it was two words. It was never again.
Mm-hmm.
And then he walked out. And then ever since that moment, I have never done that again.
Right.
And that's why that just shows me the presence that he had to understand that, yeah, I'm not from here either, but you're here now.
Right.
And you need to really embrace the area and embrace the teams because we matter. And going to that first Super Bowl in Houston, it was a learning experience because I had only one previous, encounter covering the Super Bowl. But I learned a lot from Steve. Steve did not like talking to the celebrity radio row, right?
Mm-hmm.
He liked talking to his guys. He liked talking to guys like Ira Kaufman. He liked talking to guys like, geez, what was the gentleman's name that we used to have on every week for an hour?
Steve Gallo, Warren
Steve
Sharp,
Gallo
those
was
guys,
one, Warren
Todd
Sharp, all that kind of
Furman.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was at the Super Bowl, I was under the impression, well, if he's going to say no, then I'm going to get everything else, and that's how we kind of expanded the Super Bowl coverage that we did on DAE. But there was almost a semblance of you're working against me, not for me,
Mm-hmm.
until he saw the end result on Friday. And with Steve, you got to try things to earn his respect.
Right.
You talked about it with Barker Bite. You have to try things to earn his respect. It shows that you're putting effort into the thing that he called home, which was the station and his show. So that Friday, we met in the hotel bar. I was there with another member of the media who I will not name unless he says it's okay. And literally, Steve walked in, laid down a very nice black American Express card, and said, "We're going." And that was kind of my open door moment with the big dog. We closed that son of a bitch, and it was funny. The next day, we're waiting in the airport. We're on the same flight back home. I'm riding in coach. He's riding in first class because
Yeah,
that
I was
was
gonna
in
say.
it was in this contract. So I see him, getting in line, say, hey, have a good flight. See him on the way, as I go to the 31st row where he's in row 2. I say, hey, have a good flight. And then that's the night that I got a call from Travis Daly, who used to be our senior vice president of programming at iHeart. And that's when Steve, I believe, had a stroke. And it's a shame because, I really felt for a long time that there was a disconnect between me and him personally because of the nature of my hire.
Right.
And I thought that we had a really good experience together. And I got to see what Steve Duemig really was, a
Right.
truly gentle soul and a good person, and a guy that treated you as you treated him. If you work hard, he will believe in you and he'll back you. And I feel kind of robbed a little bit because I wish I would have gotten more of that. And when we went through the process of obviously him coming back and trying to do shows, I think we got a little. I personally got a little sense of that, but I was not going to be the guy that said, we're not
Right.
doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the station got a lot of pushback on that, and I wanted him to go out like he wanted to go out.
Right.
I thought it was only fair, and it's because of the respect and the prestige that he has in the Tampa Bay market. And I agree with you. There will not be another person that dominates the culture of Tampa Bay sports and discussion of Tampa Bay sports like the big dog. There will not be another person like that. It's funny. You were mentioning today, when you were talking, the blog, believe it or not, when we announced as a station the passing of Steve, is up, and it has a lot of, tweets still embedded in it, including one by Dave Wills. And
Wow.
that one really, I was reading that while you were going through your stuff, and Dave was right, and I'll read it right now. Saddened by this news, I might not have always agreed with what he said or how he said, but he always had his finger on the pulse of Tampa Bay sports fans, and was our guard dog when outsiders went out after our teams. His on-air passion was second to none. 100% correct.
No doubt.
And it's a real shame. And I'm like you this time around, first time not in the building. We used to rally as a station, I felt, every year since his passing to make sure that this day was recognized. So I just felt compelled to share my thoughts and my stories and my thanks and prayers and thoughts to his family, because he deserves it. That family deserves it. And there will never be another one of him. There just won't.
You got that right. John, appreciate the call, man. Thank you, buddy.
Of course.
You got it, man. It's a great John Momola there. Check out everything that's going on with Barrett Media. John's doing a great job with them. Yeah, man. Unbelievable. We'll always remember the big dog. It's such a profound impact on everything that we've done. God, you're right. I mean, you look at the impact that he had, and you wish we just had more. I remember the day where, unfortunately, he couldn't finish the show, and he was just like, "I can't do this anymore." And I had to host from like the producer's side of the. It was sports radio. I was a producer, but I had to go. There was like another little cubicle that I had to host the show from unprompted because the big dog couldn't go on. He was just like, I can't do this anymore. It was rough, man. It was rough. But on a day like today, we want to remember the positive things. We want to remember the good times. And Justin Pegg says Steve Carney was there. And I think so because I ended up taking over hosting, and I think Steve took over for me. But I remember the talks on Wednesdays with Joe Bucks fan and the guys coming in studio, and Steve and Lee and Ira and, Todd Furman and Steve Gallo and all those guys, man. We had such a good time. Dick Girardi coming on talking about the ponies. God, it was just such a blast. Such a blast. But we remember you, big dog. We'll always remember you on a day like today. We love you. We miss you. RIP the big dog. Robert, what's going on, buddy? Thanks so much. Yeah, give me I got Gabby coming on in 2 minutes, so you got about 60 seconds. Go ahead, buddy.
Hey, man, I just wanted to say thanks for having me on. Of course, I grew up when the big dog was on the radio. I remember vividly being in my dad's car and listening to him come on the radio and do his rants. But I just want to say thanks for keeping up the good work, man. Especially after the unfortunate circumstances with everything. But I'll always follow you, even all the way here from OKC, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Robert. Man, you think the Thunder are going to win Game 7? What do you think?
Absolutely. Me and my fiance are going to be season ticket holders next year. So
nice. Yeah, and like I said, man, I think that they're such a talented team. They're so versatile. They have so many guys that can guard so many different spots. It's just that experience. They just don't have that same experience as Denver. And I think if they can just kind of stay out in front the entire time, they don't want to get in like that dog fight back and forth with them. If they do that, I think they're in trouble. Robert, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you,
brother. Appreciate you.
Be well. Good stuff there, Robert Cochran, the man. But yeah, finally on the big dog. Shout out to and John Momola put this Johnny Mimosa, as we like to call him now. By the way, a shout out to the Tampa Bay Lightning for being class and keeping the memory of Steve alive with his plaque. Staying in the barn business is business, but the respect for his memory is loved. And it's funny too, because every time I go up to the press box and I tap his plaque on the wall, every time when I see Phil up there, he says the same thing too. He's just like, that crazy son of a gun. And I go, yeah, but there was nobody that defended the Lightning like the big dog, Steve Duemig. Nobody. And that's part of the reason why I think I'm so invested in the Bolts and why I still cover this team with the same kind of fervor all these years later, because that was the connection that Steve and I had. It was hockey, it was soccer, but it was the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I feel like, I don't know, I think it's maybe subconsciously. I mean, that's why I put so much effort into covering the Lightning. I spend my own money to cover them on the road because I feel like I'm kind of carrying that torch for the big dog.